Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I am your host, Willie Bragg. My apologies for Saturday nights because there's a lot of competition out there on Saturday nights. So I'm thinking that maybe next week I might start doing my live streams at 8 p.m. instead of 9, because it seems like 9 o'clock onward, it seems like there's a lot of other progressive programming going on. I don't want to infringe on friendly competition. So, and that includes friendly competition such as the Matrix, Beauty and the Boomer, and Bitch with Misty Wisdom. So what I think I'm going to start doing, it just occurred to me today that I'm going to start doing my live stream maybe at 8 p.m. For now on. The Willie Bragg Show will probably start live streaming at 8 p.m. on Saturday nights instead of at 9. I've been thinking about this for quite some time today. So I will come to a decision, but more than likely that's going to be the new schedule. So I want to go and mention that real quick to y'all. So anyway, I want to say hello to Snipe Hunter. Bonjour. And I want to say hello to Extra Bull. Hello, Warren. How are you? and all that. So anyway, what I also want to talk about is the online left drama, because while it's drama on the one hand, there's actual substance behind he said and she said, because it's sort of a barometer of where we're going as the left, which way to go. As a former member of the old Socialist Party, there used to be a mantra between the Social Democratic moderates and the revolutionary Marxists, and it was called reform versus revolution. And there's always been the great middle in that party where they're like, well, why not do both? Non-reformist reforms, and try to look forward instead of sniping at each other. But that's what's happened with the online left, and that's what happened. It's an illustration of what happened with the broader left in America, where we can't meet eye to eye because it's all, where everybody's trying to walk around acting like which one of us has the bigger dick around. No sexist intention there with what I'm saying. The point I'm trying to say is that's what it's coming down to. And so right now we're trying to decide with the death of the Bernie movement. Let's face it, the Bernie movement is dead. It failed. I had to go and wake up to that fact myself recently. I look at Bernie now as a slightly better Democrat, but maybe good enough to vote for if I was in Vermont, but thankfully he's not running for president. Would I vote for him in Vermont if I was living in Vermont for re-election for the U.S. Senate? I probably would. I wouldn't give him any money. I would never give that man any more money. The fortune that the people say that he's acquired over the years, some of it came from me, a pittance of it. But we will. I'm so glad to hear Warren said we will have a show tonight. Last week I advertised the secret show, and there was no secret show. Warren wasn't feeling his best last week, and it happens to all of us. I did a brag lance last night, and I had a migraine, and y'all probably remember me talking about it. It's my fault. I did not take my blood pressure medicine that day until just before the show, and that's what happened. And so I had that little pinched nerve behind my eye. It was just a horrible feeling. It finally went away. I almost called out that evening for work because I work graveyard shift, but I am meandering to the side like I normally do. Let's go and begin at the beginning, and let's talk about Briahna Joy Gray and Cenk Uygur, because that's what's being talked about this week. So we're going to talk, and I think the best way to start, we need to start on a comedic note, because what better way that we can do this than to use a little bit of comedy. So if words were violence, a rematch between Briahna Joy Gray and Cenk Uygur. And this is from no other than Turncoat Don. I can't resist, folks. Turncoat Don puts a smile on my face, and I have to go and play this. So enjoy. I always do. So here we go.
Guys, do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I do.
One of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats, or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do, was the moment around force the vote. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support force the vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember, that caused a significant rift. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become speaker. Cenk,
Sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your
Fantasy land.
characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by their personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities weren't at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske, Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that set all of this out contemporaneously, so you can go back and look. But it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
That's not
yes,
true.
He did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is able, as a mature person, to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left and less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking through some of these tough issues.
You got knocked the fuck out.
Okay. Turncoat Don is a genius. I mean, he knows how to take the shit live mindset and just make the shit live make it worthless for what it is. And obviously, Cenk Uygur has taken a shit live take on matters, and Briahna Joy Gray, doing what she likes to do, and that is to make mincemeat out of morons like Cenk Uygur, because Cenk Uygur is a mental midget. It brings me no pleasure to say that. I didn't used to think that, but he's a mental midget. But anyhow, what I also want to discuss is Cenk Uygur real quick, because the thing about Cenk Uygur is he is an inconsistent hypocrite, because Cenk Uygur will cancel somebody's ass without realizing that he's a victim of it. And it gives me a chance to show to everybody what a failure his Justice Democrats were. So would be. So and I was an advocate of the Justice Democrats years ago when it came into being. It brings me no pleasure to say that I wish they would have been a success story. I wish they would have been. But I need to go and bring that point out, because there are still people in the year 2023 that acts like AOC is basically trying to be the new cutting edge in political discourse, that she's the one that's keeping it real, when all she is basically a 30-something crybaby. And so, this Justice Democrats was a failure. I love the idea of a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. We gave it a shot. It failed. It's not the first time it's been done. It failed. It keeps failing every time. It was a little more successful in the past. I mean, I guess you could say maybe the first time historically was when socialists and to some degree communists in the 1930s influenced FDR, and anarchists influenced FDR to do New Deal legislation, watered their ideas down into the New Deal. That was the first wave. I guess the second wave was the civil rights movement, in the 1950s and 60s, along with the environmental movement, the feminist movement, the gay and lesbian movement, and the various other movements, liberation movements that came about later on to push the Democrats into a better direction. And I would say that maybe even as late as the 1980s, the Democratic Party was still in fairly good standing, certainly far, far away from being perfection. Definitely not perfection, but certainly a better party than what it is today. They were halfway standing up against Ronald Reagan, while today Joe Biden has turned into Ronald Reagan. He's the 11th term of Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump was Ronald Reagan. Barack Obama was Ronald Reagan. George W. Bush was Ronald Reagan. Bill Clinton was Ronald Reagan. George Bush Sr. was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was Ronald Reagan. We're still living in the Reagan era. And it was last night on Braglands with Sherry Weiss when she was talking about the Paul memo. That seemed to be the blueprint of everything that's wrong with this country, that I look in the past with people like Ronald Reagan and still living amongst us with people like Mitch McConnell. And the Clintons and the Joe Manchins of the world and what have you. It's one big club and none of us are in it, as the saying goes. So anyway, I'm going to get back to Cenk Uygur at the moment here. This is from Angie Moon, a friend of the show, and she does a video. It's a little bit dated from 3 years ago, so she might have had a slight change of opinions for better, because I think that many of us were of the same mindset 3 years ago. Bear that in mind, but a lot of it's still relevant. So I am going to go and play you that video. Bear in mind that this is from 3 years ago. So it's called Cancel Culture, Left and Right, and the Dangers of It. And it involves Cenk Uygur. There we go. As soon as she starts. Come on.
Meanwhile, Amber Heard is still getting acting jobs, and she still has not been fired from Aquaman. Justice Democrats, Cenk Uygur. People change over time, and I hate that people cannot recognize that. The Justice Democrats are a progressive PAC that was started by Kyle Kulinski and Cenk Uygur, and two leaders of Bernie's 2016 presidential campaign, with the goal of getting more progressives into Congress, because the presidency isn't the only battle, and arguably Congress is more important in many ways. Back in 2017, you would see both of them plugging Justice Democrats. No doubt were the Justice Democrats instrumental in changing Congress and getting rising stars like Ilhan Omar, AOC, and Rashida Tlaib to Washington to advocate for progressive policies. However, there were some negatives, and the group fell into that woke scold cancel culture that pervades the left. What happened? Basically, the Young Turks' outspoken founder, Cenk Uygur, once upon a time was a Republican and wrote these sexist blog posts in the late 90s and early 2000s. He has since deleted those posts, but Internet Archive is a thing, and someone uncovered this. Since then, he had changed his views and became more progressive, and love him or hate him, he's not a sexist anymore. He's made an apology.
Okay, I want to talk about that. Cenk Uygur was a Republican prior to being the faux progressive that he is today, and in his college years, and I guess through law school, what have you, he wrote some blogs in regard to women that and having trouble dating and very resentful, that no woman was looking at him. I mean, gee, I wonder why. But honestly, and I don't even think he was necessarily a right-wing Republican. For what it sounded like, he was like libertarian leaning. Not the worst person in the world. Fiscally conservative, socially liberal, sounded like that's what he was. And then he eventually became left of center. But as he became left of center, he still has some reactionary views, such as support for the death penalty, and he was still anti-union. And the guy who calls Jimmy Dore right wing, and it was Jimmy Dore that convinced him that the death penalty was wrong. You know, Jimmy Dore was always opposed to the death penalty, and it took Jimmy Dore to convince Cenk Uygur that the death penalty was wrong. But Jimmy Dore is the right winger, Cenk Uygur isn't, right? Yeah. We see how that goes. Jimmy Dore always supported unions, and it took others to shame him, Cenk Uygur, into unionizing TYT. So I just kind of, and wanted to mention that because Cenk Uygur is a union buster. He might have had a sincere change of heart on the sexism of the 1990s, early 2000s. That is ancient history. And what the Justice Democrats did to him, canceling him out after he created the fucking group, him and Kyle Clancy, they created the fucking group, and then they go turn on him like that. That's fucked up. That really is fucked up. And in that regard, I will for 5 seconds feel sorry for Cenk Uygur, but right there from the get-go is proof of why the left can't get anywhere, because what the Justice Democrats did by holding somebody's past against them. As much as I disparage against the Republicans, if a Republican was once a progressive or liberal that turned right-wing, they usually embrace them for turning into the conservative. They as homophobic as the right wing are, they love, figuratively speaking, sucking the cock of Dave Rubin. I mean, Dave Rubin, they figuratively speaking, they open their mouth and let Dave Rubin face fuck them, because they love the fact that he's turned right wing or embraced their talking points. So, but on the left side, there's no redemptions. There's no forgiveness. And honestly, there really isn't on the right-wing side. They're doing this for politically cynical reasons. They have a Machiavellian response and are in some ways more efficient in that regard, something where the left lacks. And so it's kind of like, I don't agree with her on everything, but it's like what Kim Iverson says when it comes to some of these people on the left. They have kind of, and I've said this myself, that they sort of have a fundamentalist Christian outlook of non-forgiveness, and you're going to go and be super judgmental or what have you, and that's what some of these people are acting like, and that's what happened with Cenk Uygur as far as him being a victim of cancel culture. I'll go on.
And was ousted from the group because they thought he would be detrimental to the movement, even though the Young Turks are a popular news show on the internet. This is an out-of-proportion response to something that happened a long time ago. Cenk has changed and apologized, and this is what he gets? Being kicked out of an organization he founded? Why do the left infight so much? At some point, this all gets so stupid. I get holding people accountable and wanting them to grow and change and be better people. But how does that happen when they get cancelled over small stuff that happened so long ago? These purity tests are like a field of lasers. Bernie with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the most popular podcaster, and he doesn't like establishment Democrats or Republicans. People on both sides have their ideas of him, like he's this big bad conservative, un-PC guy and a douchebag. Honestly though, if you get off the internet and actually talk to people, you'll find that normies don't care about the culture war and PC culture. Joe Rogan is a lot like your average, not-so-online normie. Joe Rogan is a guy who is open-minded and willing to learn, and he's had Bernie, Tulsi, and Andrew Yang on the podcast. Other candidates beg to be on the podcast, but Joe Rogan has the luxury of turning them down, and so he did. Because who wants to listen to establishment Democrats? If you want that, there are plenty of platforms for that, like CNN and MSNBC. A lot of people on the left believe in guilt by association and will whinge when someone goes on a show of someone they don't like. You go on Fox News, why are you talking to the enemy? Even though Joe Rogan is nothing like Tucker Carlson, people got mad at left-wing candidates who went on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, and of course, Bernie Sanders' campaign showed it off. He's the most popular podcaster. After that, AOC backed away from Bernie's campaign and refused to publicly campaign for him when he needed it the most. And it's almost certainly because of that Joe Rogan endorsement, according to my conspiracy theory. Had AOC gone out and aggressively campaigned for Bernie, would we have seen Bernie winning the primary? I don't know. What did Joe Rogan do that was so bad? Tell transphobic jokes, which a lot of comedians have done. Fast forward a few months and AOC fully supports Joe Biden and his pick for VP, Kamala Harris, who refused to allow trans inmates to transition and would put trans women in men's prisons. Tell me which is more transphobic and actually hurts trans people's material well-being more. A person making a joke but will fight for your rights? Or a person who will deny your rights but act all PC in public and not make any jokes that push the envelope? Fuck civility politics. Did she expect Bernie to disavow him? Sometimes people you disagree with, a lot, have good things to say. Stop with the tribalism. AOC often has great things to say, and is the progressive gateway for the normie suburban liberals. And I agree a lot with her politics, but like Kyle Kalinske says, she gets too caught up in the culture war. ContraPoint.
Okay, that's enough of that. Now, a disclaimer. That video was from 2020. So that was from a 2020 mindset when AOC was perceived as base, even by many of us in this audience here, myself included. AOC is worthless, but from that mindset, this is an example of tribalism right there. And what AOC did in 2020, I remember when she refused to temporarily do campaign work for Bernie Sanders because he showed up on Joe Rogan, and how fucked up was that, and I don't agree with Joe Rogan on a whole lot, but I don't get this about Joe Rogan. It's like the shit libs are more tolerant of fucking Meghan McCain, this right-wing neocon Karen, than they are on Joe Rogan, who's further left than Meghan McCain. They're far more tolerant of, Chuck Norris and all these other people, these Republican actors and actresses and celebrities, than they are of Joe Rogan. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that Joe Rogan says that we must tolerate, and well, he's got the right to say it, but it doesn't mean that Joe Rogan's, what I'm trying to say, Joe Rogan's, anything that I disagree about Joe Rogan, there are people that are far worse ideologically than he is, that the shit lists are more tolerant of. And I don't get it. I don't even watch Joe Rogan that much. I mean, if he has an interesting guest, I'll probably look at it, I suppose. It's been a long time. I don't even remember the last time I seen Joe Rogan. But it's like that they try to push some of these people to the right, and they make it so damn easy. They did this with Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard says a few things that I really don't like what she said, but they push her to the right, and they rather side with Hillary Clinton than when Hillary Clinton was bashing her. Remember when Hillary Clinton was bashing her 4 years ago at this time, the woman was to Tulsi Gabbard's right. And I will argue that Hillary Clinton is still to Tulsi Gabbard's right. But to those that want to attack on Tulsi Gabbard, we got to defend Hillary Clinton as if it was still the year 2016. I mean, and if we don't properly defend Hillary Clinton, that we're somehow pro-Trump. I'm tired of that mindset. I'm tired of that mindset. Fuck the shit libs on this mindset. Really, they can fuck off. Every one of them, with their damn Ukraine flags on their bios and all of that. So anyway, let's go get into the meat and potatoes of this, and that's Cenk Uygur being on Rising on September 18th, and Oh, well, can't do that. Okay, hold on. But we can do this. We'll go ahead and play that video right now. Cenk Uygur on Rising. And here we go. And enjoy, and I will interrupt and comment in between. All right, give me a second here. Video's buffering, so sorry about that.
Founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, is out with a new book entitled Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country, and America is going to love it. I don't know if I'm going to love it, but apparently America will.
The book argues two main ideas. One, that progressives are correct on substantively these kind of policy issues. And two, America is actually a very progressive country. Millions of us know that we are part of something larger and that a movement is already transforming.
Okay, hold on a second here. There was something weird going on. Hopefully we'll get, I think we got this resolved.
Washington. Cenk is here with us now to discuss. Welcome.
Maybe. Why is it doing that? Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's having a mind of its own right now. So hopefully we'll get a video popping in very soon. I have an ad blocker, by the way. Come on.
Google has refused to run our ad, labeling it election advertising, which clearly it is not. Click now to see for yourself.
And it still shows ads anyway.
Hi guys, Audrey here. Welcome back to the channel.
No. Come on. Very embarrassing, folks, what's going on here. All right, let's try that again. Getting an ad blocker was not supposed to happen with an ad blocker, by the way. Yeah, pay good money for an ad blocker. That's not supposed to happen. We're going to get a video, and I'm so sorry about that. Video will be coming up shortly. Come on. It's not my technical difficulties. That's the unfair part about this. And I'm live streaming. Anyway, in the video, and I will shut up when the video starts playing. It's buffering right now. But it's just from September the 18th, and Cenk Uygur attacks Jimmy Dore, battles Briahna Joy Gray over voting for Biden in 2024.
That there's a genuine populist movement that just needs to be tapped into. And
really? Why is it doing that? Come on now. God damn it.
Google has refused to run our ad, labeling it election advertising.
Hold on a
which
second.
Clearly it is
We're going
not.
to do this. I pay not to have a fucking ads on my YouTube. I pay not to have ads on my YouTube. I expect not to have ads on my YouTube. Sorry for the language, folks. So let me go and do this again. Most embarrassing. And if I don't, you know what? I know what I'm going to do. I'll do it from here. I know where I can, let's see. I know where I can do this without any problems. And let's see. Okay. This live stream is not allowing me. I mean, this shenanigans is not allowing me to be professional. And I was on a professional streak there. And we'll do this. Here we go. This should work this time. It's another video on backup, but relevant to the video. So we'll do that. And hopefully things will work out for the best. How you doing, Steve-O? How are you doing, Daniel Barry Sports Highlight? I'm getting the video ready. And I hope the Dissidents doesn't mind me borrowing their videos to do this. Okay. Come on.
Comment on. So just to set this up a bit, Cenk Uygur was there to promote his new book called Justice is Coming. It's about his experience founding the Justice Democrats. And the premise of Justice Democrats, which is that there's going to be this progressive takeover of the Democratic Party, and that not only will the party love it, but the country can't wait for the progressive agenda to arrive through insurgent primary campaigns inside the Democratic Party. And he lays out a sort of blueprint for that vision. Now, keep in mind, he's been hawking this book for the past couple of years. Okay. He mentioned he was working on this book a very long time ago, and now it's just getting set to come out. And so he's on a little press tour. But Briahna Joy Gray challenged him in the sense that she said, well, you know, it's been said by a lot of people that TYT has recently not lived up to the premise of even the Justice Democrats ethos, because people have accused them of selling out and sort of becoming just more, you know, an arm of the Democratic Party come general election season. They've lost their teeth as, you know, insurgents and stuff like that. So she's sort of challenging not just the premise of the book, not even so much the premise of the book, but whether or not Cenk has remained loyal to the ethos of the book. So that's where we pick up here. So let's take a listen. And this is, you know, there's about 7 minutes here, so we'll obviously stop and start as we go.
I mean, Cenk, I think specifically one of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats, or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do, was the moment around Force the Vote, where there was a push for the elected squad members to take an adversarial relationship to the Democratic Party and Nancy Pelosi specifically, to withhold their votes for them the same way that we've now seen the Freedom Caucus model with withholding their votes for Kevin McCarthy at the beginning of this year, really testing the theory of how that would work and getting in return a number of concessions that I think we can all acknowledge would be amazing for the left to have achieved. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support Force the Vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember,
vast majority of the audience, I think like 85% of the audience in that poll supported Force the Vote. But as you can see, he's getting angry. You can see he's getting hot already. So let's see how he responds.
That caused a significant rift down the left that persists in many ways. What do you say to that? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, it's crazy. But thank you for bringing it up, because I'm happy to address it and try to clarify the best I can. Guys, do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I.
No, you make it very clear that you don't want to force the vote, because that is the hill you die on, Cenk. since it came up as an idea in 2019, but when Jimmy Dore came up with the idea, then all of a sudden the idea became garbage, and you just made it profoundly clear, either by the Katzenberg money that was given to you in 2016 that dictated for you to go and shit on the ideas that you claim to be for previous to that money that you were getting, or your animus that you and Anna were having toward Jimmy Dore, adjacent to people like Sam Cedar and David Pakman at that time, and still to this day.
I do.
You do look like you don't want to force votes. You know why? Because you refuse to force votes. That's why. Like the level of gaslighting on display here is quite epic. Not just gaslighting, but flat out dishonesty and rewriting of history.
And I tell every congressperson that's going into Congress for the first time, if they'll listen to me, I tell them, you have to create what the civil rights movement called good trouble. Now, that doesn't mean you go in wildly and flailing around doing impractical things, but it means you come up with a coordinated strategy, you then create good trouble, and then you put a spotlight on an issue where you are on the winning end of it, popularity-wise.
But they didn't do that. All they did was become just Democrats. They're not Justice Democrats anymore, Cenk. They're just Democrats. They just come in there. They're window dressing. They're just window dressing. They look edgy. They say edgy things, but when a push comes to shove, they tote the line and they dare not challenge the Democratic leadership. I wish that the squad would have the gonads that the Freedom Caucus have without the ugly ideology of the squad of the Freedom Caucus. And I hate calling them the Freedom Caucus because they're not pro-freedom. But here's the thing. I respect them more for this reason. They took that goddamn strategy of force the vote, and they took that moron Kevin McCarthy, and they told that motherfucker, you're going to play ball with us, or you're not going to be speaker. And he cucked like the little bitch he was toward the Freedom Caucus. Now, you could have done that with Nancy Pelosi, but you decided not to. You wanted to play nice with Nancy Pelosi.
So, for example, one of the things we did with Justice Democrats is as soon as AOC won, we did a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. That put Green...
I found out about that. I thought that AOC set up the sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office. That didn't happen. She happened to be there. It was great timing for her, and she was there when it happened. So it made her look good for the left. You know, I got the left cheering me. But she doesn't want the left cheering her anymore. She wants the establishment to cheer her these days. And this is why many of us do not support AOC anymore. Probably a good 80% of us that were for AOC years ago, we're kind of like, we're just washing our hands of her, and we're like, we're just like, whatever, Oh, there's still some people out there that still like her that are under the delusion that she's still fighting for us. There is a Twitter person online named Chaotic Leftist, a total moron who believes that AOC is still fighting the good fight. Well, that Karen had me blocked on Twitter because she thought, she accused me of being pro Mitch McConnell. I'm not kidding you. She accused me, of all people, of being pro Mitch McConnell over a Jimmy Dore quote about Mitch McConnell that she decided to project and take out of context.
New Deal on the map, that put Sunrise Movement on the map, and in a lot of ways it reinforced Justice Democrats being on.
So first of all, Sunrise Movement was very quick to sell out as soon as they realized that they had to in order to keep donations coming in. Number two, our friend Kit, who's in the chat here, by the way, shout out to Kit Cabello and Harlan's Media. He was on the Post-Duopoly show with CJ and myself last night. He made a very good point that AOC didn't really plan that sit-in with the Green New Deal activists and the Sunrise kids. She showed up to the office and they were there and she joined them. But that was not something that Cenk Uygur said, hey, I have an idea. Let's coordinate a protest inside Nancy Pelosi's office. That's not how it happened. He's taking credit for that now. He didn't have anything to do with that. She just happened to join it in the moment.
I mean, I took it as the royal we.
You mean like AOC? Like he's sort of, taking credit through her?
Yeah, like our movement.
Our movement.
Our movement collectively, that's what we did. I don't know if he was literally directly taking credit there, to be fair, but what he's really aligning is, okay, so what the fuck's AOC doing now?
Right.
What's she doing now? When was the last time?
What's the Sunrise Movement doing now?
Yeah, what are they doing? What are any of these people doing now? If anything, all the people you're naming are an argument against the tactic you're advocating.
Exactly.
I want you to take those kind of actions, but you have to actually use your mind and independent judgment as to which action to take. So force a vote. Jimmy comes to me. Back then, we're still friends and allies. And I go, oh, look, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Okay, I definitely want to do something where we're forcing action, right? So what's your plan, Jimmy? He's like, well, we're going to force a vote and we're going to, get Medicare for all. I'm like, brother, I want Medicare for all, but you have to take steps.
Not true. Not true.
I'm sure that's exactly what happened. That was the conversation. Jimmy Dore.
Well, I personally didn't mean to interrupt them, but I personally think that force a vote didn't 100% mean we're going to get Medicare for all, or even better, by telling Nancy Pelosi she better play ball with us. It was about getting extractions. And AOC said we got to go and keep our powder dry for things like minimum wage increase. We didn't get a minimum wage increase. I mean, we didn't get anything. We didn't get anything in the past 3 years, almost 3 years. We didn't get anything. We just got a Mitt Romney presidency at 55 miles an hour is what we got with Joe Biden. A Mitt Romney presidency at 55 miles an hour with a side order of dementia.
Dore told you that if you do this, you're going to get Medicare. Come on, man. You never said that on a show.
No.
Why wouldn't he say that? What?
We all know that's an absolute lie.
You guys?
Right. It was very clear what the purpose was. The purpose was to force it into the national conversation, which it would have done in a very powerful way, because if you look at the attention that the Republican forced the vote commanded, it was, what was that? 4 days of just wall-to-wall coverage about how McCarthy was being embarrassed, right? And they were talking nonstop, 24 hours a day, about what the Freedom Caucus was demanding from leadership. And so that gave a lot of oxygen to the new church committee, which they ended up forming. That's the weaponization of the federal government that has produced a lot of the hearings that we've been covering since then, right? So imagine you had a week's worth of TV footage devoted entirely to Nancy Pelosi refuses to grant a floor vote on Medicare for all, right? Imagine the oxygen that would have created for that issue. That's at the worst. At best, you actually win more concessions, right? They could have had a number of things, not with the goal of actually winning them in the moment, but with the goal of forcing leadership's hands to raise the stakes on these issues by calling for votes and getting people on the record. If you're heading up Justice Democrats, how could you not want that? Because what could give your organization more ammunition than getting dozens of corporate Democrats on record opposing Medicare for all? What a fundraising boon that would be for Justice Democrats, for our revolution, because now they would come away with that with dozens of races that they want to run, and they would recruit candidates and they'd raise money, right? How could you be against? How could you possibly be against that? It makes no sense that you would be against.
I tell you what it is. They're afraid of what is called the Ralph Nader, Bernie Sanders effect. That's what it is. They're so fucking scarred from 2000 when Ralph Nader ran for president. Oh, he ruined it and caused George W. Bush to win. And now the shit-livs are sucking the cock of George W. Bush because he opposes Orange Man. They both oppose Donald Trump. So he's okay now. But still, in their eyes, Ralph Nader is a piece of shit. At the same time, everybody... Even the people that supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, in the back of their mind, they're like, well, maybe we prevented Hillary Clinton from being the first woman president. Who gives a fuck about the gender of Hillary Clinton when the policy matters? If Donald Trump would have said, Medicare for all, free college, ending the neocon wars, well, he kind of said that, but sort of meant it and sort of didn't mean it, depending on the time of day, or what have you. If he would have campaigned on a Bernie-style platform, whatever, If Hillary Clinton would have campaigned on a Bernie-style platform, and this is when Bernie was based, by the way, I'm not holding water for Bernie Sanders today by saying this. It would have been a different story. But think about it is, in the back of their mind, they think that they prevented Hillary Clinton from becoming president, the first female president, and that they accidentally put in Adolf Hitler II. That's what they think. That's what they think. There's a lot of you could be saying about Donald Trump. Again, I want to make it clear, we'll never vote for Donald Trump, but he's not Hitler. Bush was closer to Hitler than Trump. His family were tied in with Hitler. And look at the Holocaust in Iraq that was caused by Bush and Cheney. I mean, it wasn't motivated necessarily by race, but it was motivated by imperialism and greed.
Against that.
That's where these fucks talk out of both sides of their mouths. Because if you really believe in the politics that you're talking about, you would have backed force the vote.
And that's it. They don't want to back force the vote. Getting back to my previous point, because when it comes down to doing force the vote, and they're afraid that it will fail, and there'll be backlash against the left, against the squad, in a way that there was a backlash against Bernie and a backlash against Ralph Nader. And so they are fearful that they would be primaried, gerrymandered, or what have you. And what happened to Cynthia McKinney in 2002, what happened to, I guess it was in 2012, Dennis Kucinich, would be happening to them, that they would be the next target. So they're cowards, and they're afraid to stand up. Say what you will about the Republicans, and there's nothing about the Republican Party that I find salutable or desirable in what they want to do for America. But I give them props. They're not afraid to stand up against their leaders when push comes to shove. But the Democrats, the people who are supposed to be fighting the good fight on the left, they're not willing to stand up, and they don't want to upset Nancy Pelosi. They don't want to make her feel uneasy. I do. I wanted to make her feel uneasy. I want to make Hakeem Jeffries feel uneasy. I want to make I want to make them feel uneasy. You go and fuck with us. There is a political price you pay for this, and you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do this. Briahna Joy Gray eloquently told Bosch, who hates the notion of forced to vote, that he has something in common with fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was a sidekick for Kevin McCarthy. She did not like what what Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and those clowns were doing over there, forcing Kevin McCarthy with the concessions. Then she eloquently pointed out that just like Marjorie Taylor Greene, in his own way, in her own way, just like Bosch, Marjorie Taylor Greene also was opposed to force the vote.
We'd be living in a different universe. Force the vote was one of those pivotal moments where if they had gone one way, their support would have gotten even stronger. The people who supported them would have doubled down on them. They went the other way, and it largely broke faith in this entire political project. It broke faith in the squad. The final break was the infrastructure bill when they allowed them to decouple it. That was really the final collapse of support. But that,
I would say, for me, the final collapse of support was the railroad strike. They can't even go and support the railroad workers, self-proclaimed socialists. AOC sold out quicker than fucking Tony Blair in the UK. And then sure, we all know about Tony Blair not being, being a piece of shit that he is. But when he got elected in 1983, and I think it was in Sheffield constituency. I think that was this constituency in the UK. He wasn't elected as necessarily a far left-wing socialist, but he was a down-the-line, further left person than what he became as the leader of the Labour Party. And he went right-wing down the road. AOC has done the same thing that Tony Blair did in the UK in a shorter amount of time, believe it or not. She's a Puerto Rican American version of Tony Blair. Yes, I said that.
Was a major, major moment that turned people off to this entire approach to politics. You yourself helped to burn down the approach that you're talking about right now, because you showed people in that moment that you're full of shit. The people you advocate for are full of shit. The people that you've helped get in office are full of shit. So nobody will listen to you now. And he in the end, he knows that. He has no good answer for it. That's why he has to turn this whole segment into a litigation of Jimmy Dore's character, which, by the way, he's doing a great Jordan impression here, because I had no idea how infected with Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome this prick is. But Jesus fucking Christ, man. Because look, Cenk, we call out the untalented, but we'll acknowledge talent where it's present. Cenk's a talented broadcaster. He's smarter than this. Like, this seems like, one, he doesn't know how to get out of this question, and two, wow, does he fucking hate Jimmy Dore. And three, you don't hate someone that much if you really think they're crazy, if you really think they have nothing to say. He hates Jimmy Dore so much because he's a rebuke of this entire political project that he claims to be supporting and a part of. And deep down, he is afraid that he's right. Like, you don't care. When you don't take somebody seriously, you don't get this fucking animated about what they say and what they do. They're just not even on your radar, right? The fact that he's getting this worked up, come on, man. That is the main proponent of a counter argument against everything that's, I'm sure, is in his little book. And if you look at how he responded to it when given the opportunity, he has no response. He really has no response to Jimmy Dore's argument other than ad hominem attacks.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And it goes on.
You have to take steps. If you go straight to Medicare for all, you have a 0% chance of it passing, and you're going to waste the power and the leverage. And who are you going to get as Speaker of the House? And he's like, I don't know. That's your strategy? I'm not going to agree with a moron who has no strategy, no plan, not at all practical. We could have forced a vote on $15 minimum wage, and we could have won that vote.
Okay, so that is just obviously a barrage of lies. From Jimmy said we were going to get Medicare for all. No, we didn't. To you're going to waste the leverage. No, you wouldn't. To this last one here, which is $15 minimum wage. We could have won that. What are you talking about? First of all,
he's just pulling that out of his prodigious ass.
Well, it's not. It's worse than that. Because forced to vote was in January of 2021, and we were talking about forcing the vote for House Speaker. We were talking about forcing the direction of the Democratic House of Representatives, not the Senate. So if you recall, and in case you don't recall, I brought a receipt for this, Democrats passed the $15 minimum wage bill through the House in July 2019. If you look, that's the date at the very bottom of that headline. The Democratic House already passed the minimum wage at the time that forced the vote was being litigated. So when he says, we could have got a $15 minimum wage, hey, schmuck, the House already passed a $15 minimum wage. The House went on to pass the $15 minimum wage through the Build Back Better bill later that year. We lost the $15.
Oh, yeah. We lost that because of people like Kirsten Sinema in the U.S. Senate. But here's the thing. Cenk Uygur was also dumb enough, same thing with Sam Cedar, dumb enough to think that if we went with forced to vote and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't become Speaker because we withheld the votes, Kevin McCarthy would be Speaker of the House, which was not going to happen. No matter how slim the Democrats' majority was at the time. Same thing now, earlier this year with Kevin McCarthy. If Kevin McCarthy would have lost the speakership, there would have been another Republican that would have been in charge, because I don't see how any Democrats are going to go and cross over and vote for a Republican. They're very tribalistic, both parties. So I mean, it's just I just don't see it happening. Maybe people withheld some votes or something like that, but abstain. I just don't see it happening because they will be held to play with party leaders if they did such a thing. So, anyway, we'll let Keaton and Russell continue.
Minimum wage because the Democrats in the Senate allowed the parliamentarian to block it. That had nothing whatsoever to do with force the vote. So why would you force a vote on a $15 minimum wage bill when here, 2 years prior, there's Nancy Pelosi touting the House passage of the $15 minimum wage bill? And I believe he knows that. He's counting on the fact. He's counting on the hope that a lot of people watching that don't know that.
Which brings us to, does he actually believe in the politics he's advocating, which we talked about this before. I got the impression that he does, but to even believe what he claims he believes, you have to delude yourself. I think he's lying, but I also think he believes in his overall premise that this is the way you do it. But it's also a lot more convenient to believe that premise than it is to go in the Jimmy Dore direction. You make a lot of enemies that way. This way, you get to have it both ways. You get to be an ineffectual guy with a show, rather than somebody with a message that's actually challenging to people in the establishment and authority. He says several times in this conversation with Briahna, about, do I seem like a guy who supports the establishment? You seem like a guy that the establishment uses to pretend that there's a point to participating in their game. That's what you see.
Well, exactly. And I don't think he feels like this strategy is really viable anymore. I think he feels like it's the closest any strategy can come to viable that he's willing to support because it protects his place within the system.
Right.
And so he has to try and gaslight people into buying into it because the alternative would be to do something more radical, which would, of course, jeopardize his place within that media world. So we got more. Let's keep going.
Instead of force the vote, like, yeah, well, you didn't do what I wanted. Okay, then I'm out. I'm not going to help you guys actually get the bills that we all want. Oh, come on, man, grow up.
No, so Cenk, I would point out that
again, that's really not true. On one of our audience's members' recommendation from Post-Duopoly last night, I actually went and I couldn't watch the whole thing. Obviously, it was 6 hours long, but I just perused some highlights of the roundtable that Katie Halper called together to do Force the Vote. It was Jimmy Dore was on it, Matt Stoller was on it, Briahna Joy Gray was on it, a few others, and it got heated at times over the course of 6 hours. But there was a discussion to be had. There was, Jimmy, Briahna, they were not my way or the highway, take my ball and go home. They sat and they had it out and they talked through it and they argued and it was very spirited, but that was part of the process. The idea that they turned you away because they were my way or the highway is nonsense. I'm sure they'd have been happy to host you as part of that roundtable.
Sure.
You didn't show up. You didn't show up because you rejected it out of hand because you knew where it would eventually lead. You knew it would lead to these candidates at the end of the day who you propped up having egg on their face, because ultimately the reality of that whole situation was Cenk Uygur and all of the force the vote deniers or the force the vote skeptics, they were against it really because they did not trust that AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, they did not trust that they had the backbone to follow it through to the end. And they were afraid that if they started it, that they would become very embarrassed at the end of it when they eventually would cave, the way guys like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert did not cave. They only gave Kevin McCarthy that speakership when he gave them some things. And even those things were not enough because now they're threatening to bounce him again. We covered that last show. He knew that these guys didn't have it in them to do what the Freedom Caucus did to their party leadership. And they knew that at the end of the day, their candidates who they were counting on to carry the banner of organizations like Our Revolution and Justice Democrats, he knew they would end up embarrassing themselves. And that's why he couldn't go through with it. And they got to come up with all these excuses and now lie about it 2 years later to make it sound like maybe they'd have been more open to it if only Jimmy Dore were nicer,
Well, and this is why all of these people who came to the forefront as part of the Sanders movement, including Bernie Sanders himself, just need to be laughed at and ignored. I mean, they're ridiculous. They've all shown us that when the moment of truth comes, they're going to blink. We've had several moments here where we really could have actually made some progress in the direction that Cenk is suggesting. And at those moments, they always blank. So shut the fuck up about this already. You had your chance. You had your chance. You should have
put the book out 2 years ago when we probably all would have bought it. 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, who's going to read this fucking
Who's going to read this book at this point?
Like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, I mean, the audience for this book is really not progressives. It's libs who want to feel like they're welcoming in fresh blood, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the ultimate thing is,
and they're not going to buy it either because you're giving too many mixed messages. You're not.
Cenk Uygur's book is so 2008. That's all I got to say. It's very 2008. I mean, maybe 2016 or, but it's certainly not 2023.
Not going to be able to sell this to the Michelle Obama autobiography crowd.
Especially since the Michelle Obama autobiography crowd can buy Ryan Grimm's book instead, because Ryan Grimm has a book on the Squad coming out now at the same time as his book. So why would these people read a bullshit book by a lousy writer like Cenk Uygur when they could read a bullshit book by a talented writer like Ryan Grimm? I mean, Ryan Grimm's a much better writer.
Don't you mean Ryan Grimjob? Let's get his name right. He's called Ryan Grimjob.
Cenk Uygur. So if you were going to read this bullshit book and you had the good version of the bullshit book by Ryan Grimm and the high school writing level version by Cenk Uygur, why would you read Cenk's book? It's funny how they're both coming out at the same time, both a few years too late.
Well, and not only that, in terms of what I'm saying, Ryan Grimm's book has a lot more appeal to that crowd because all of the Squad have been defanged. And they've all kind of been rehabilitated to lesser and greater extents for the MSNBC crowd. So that really fulfills that. Yeah, see, we're making progress. Look at all these diverse women of color we're empowering, and they all call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. So they're not a rebuke of my basic politics like I thought they were. They're actually one of us. It's nothing those people like more than a convert.
Yeah, when you have a situation where a daily show like The View 3-4 years ago, looking at Bernie Sanders, looking at AOC, looking at Tulsi Gabbard, even looking at them as pariahs, even looking at Elizabeth Warren, the snake lady, as a pariah back then. And now all of them, well, they won't accept Tulsi, of course. Some of the criticism they may have of Tulsi today, I would have myself, but the other three, they will probably have. Well, they probably still hate Bernie too. They will never forgive Bernie. Bernie is in their eyes is Ralph Nader, but the thing about it is that eventually they see the Squad members and they said they've been Clintonized. They've been. Nancy Pelosi kind of set them in the straight and narrow path. So they're okay now. They may say some edgy talking points, and we may get a little nervous over it. Oh my goodness, we may get a little nervous, but they toe the line, and they're good foot soldiers now for the Democratic Party, and they're going to carry on the Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton 1990s garbage tradition of the Democratic Party, putting the shit lib mask on Ronald Reagan's face.
Yeah, no, indeed.
McCarthy is still Speaker of the House. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become Speaker. The left, people like yourself. Wait a minute.
Who's going to replace Nancy Pelosi? Did you guys have a candidate?
Cenk, if I could.
Again, a lie. Nobody was.
Like what the fuck are you saying? Like Nancy Pelosi can't be replaced? Like what? What? That
wasn't even a plan. I think that could have been a plan. Like I would have liked that plan probably even a little better than force a vote, which is just refuse to vote for her outright. Right. Well, that's what real radicals would have done. They would have refused to have Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker. No, forget it. No force.
That's anything.
Right.
If they were fucking,
if Nancy Pelosi would have been defeated, even though I don't like Hakeem Jeffries, I would have popped champagne corks. I'd have been like, Karen, this is what you get. This is what you get. You fuck with the left. You pay the consequences. You pay the consequences. And I got a lot of grief. Got a lot of grief in 2016 for supporting Bernie, and then voting for Joe Stein on election day. Got a lot of grief from people for that. As if Hillary Clinton is some great person. A woman who wanted to go and drone strike the Ecuadorian embassy to get Julian Assange. This is what they want me to be excited about in 2016. A woman who destroyed Libya, the most prosperous country in Africa at the time, that was doing good for the continent, that was actually going to go and try to help out the other developing economies there, to not be under the influence of the American empire. They had to do something about that. So Hillary Clinton played her role as Secretary of State in the destruction of Libya. And I was always taught to believe that Gaddafi was a bad guy, and I'm looking back and I'm thinking Gaddafi wasn't not a bad guy. I'm not saying he was perfect, but he was Africa's Tito Yugoslavia. He was to Africa what Tito was to Eastern Europe.
Being serious. If they were serious in the way that those of us who supported them thought they were, that's exactly what they would have done. That's what I would do. That's what you would do. That's what most of our fucking audience would do if they weren't in prison.
If they had the right to vote.
If they had the right to
We're
vote.
still allowed to vote.
Funny enough, they're still allowed to run for office, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, here we go.
The right-wing caucus got a number of meaningful concessions, regardless.
But that's not what we were going for, Briahna. That's exactly the problem. If they said, let's go for meaningful concessions, I would have been in.
That's exactly what they said they were going for, and you know that. Again, just another blatant, obvious lie. I mean, it's just one after another, after another. What do you mean they weren't going? It was called force the vote. That was the hashtag. So what do you mean they weren't going for meaningful concessions? It wasn't hashtag bounce Pelosi. It wasn't we refuse to vote for Pelosi under any circumstances. The whole premise was we're going to force her to give us a vote on Medicare for all. Now, if you had a different ask, you could have tabled a different ask, but they never made any such counter offer. He's saying the minimum wage would have been a better offer, but of course he didn't promote that at the time because he couldn't, because as I just proved, the Democrats had already passed a minimum wage bill at that time through the House. And so there'd been no point in doing that.
They said, we're going to get Medicare for all.
Cenk,
Sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your characterization of what happened, I think
If
is
we pause it
reflective.
every time he lies, we'll never get through this. So I'm going to let it breathe.
I mean, this whole thing is amazing. Like, your brand is about being a progressive, and you're up there saying who would replace Nancy Pelosi? What? I mean, for that kind of analysis, you can go to the New York Times op-ed page.
Right. Exactly.
Of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left
I want
at
to back
the
it up
time.
a little bit because she kind of nails him here in too many words. I mean, she says it's emblematic of a lack of grace. She should have just said you're a liar. Like, you're lying.
Sure,
It's a much simpler version of what the response could have been. Go ahead. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, we're getting into one of our best moments. Briahna was really great in this interview because Cenk is a big, fat fucking blowhard. And he's not easy to manage in an interview, and she does it. She works the fish. She gives him a little line when she has to, when she sees she's not going to shut him up, but then she goes right back onto her points. This was Briahna at her best. This interview, I thought she was great throughout.
Yeah, indeed.
They said, we're going to get Medicare for all.
Cenk,
Sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your
Fantasy land.
characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by the personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities were not at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, other figures on the Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were.
Briahna, you mentioned those names. Even as much of a sellout as Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball has become, and they've gotten terrible recently. In Cenk Uygur's eyes, he looks at them and he thinks, "Oh, they're no different from the gray zone." And whereas 2 or 3 years ago, they were sort of the bridge between the gray zone, Jimmy Dore left, and the TYT, Sam Cedar, David Packman. They were sort of that middle group, middle middle way. But they kind of begging for Cenk Uygur's and Anna Kasparian birthing person's forgiveness. And, Buffalo Butt and birthing person ain't forgiving Kyle Kalinske. And Kyle Kalinske with his Eminem, dime store Eminem look, or crossing with a David Pakman being like David Pakman who uses foul language. Take your pick. Is he dime store Eminem, or is he David Pakman who uses some foul language? It's hard to say, but he's obviously like, oh, please forgive me, Cenk. Please forgive me, Anna. They don't respect him. And it's embarrassing hearing him, Anyway, I just wanted to bring that out too, because that's embarrassing every time. I'm just like, wow, Anyway.
We're being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that said all of this out contemporaneously, so you can go back and look. But it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. And to the extent that was your presumption
Briahna,
and your belief, I do think that is a real problem with communication on the left.
That you guys wanted at the time. At the time, don't make it up.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, folks, Russell's on a little bit of a delay because he's halfway around the world. So if the timing's a little awkward, I apologize. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, then he goes to filibustering her. Briahna, you know it was. I mean, that's all tactics, right? To imply to the audience that there's some secret knowledge between them, right? Oh, come on, Briahna, between you and me, what does she know? She literally just said you can go back and look at my article.
Right.
What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, it's just this whole segment is incredible. Like, clearly he knew that he was going to have to address this to try to sell this fucking steaming pile of shit he wrote. And there is no good way out of it, but you would think he could have come up with something better than this. Like, everything he's saying is so easily disprovable. As you say, it was called force the vote. Like, the whole premise was to force a vote, not to get Medicare for all. Nobody thought that. Like, who said that?
Right. Exactly.
Up now. At the time, name one other thing you guys
I invite you and the rest of the audience to go look at an article I wrote in the Current Affairs magazine in November of 2020, in which I consulted with David Sirota.
Also, it doesn't matter if there was another concession. Let's say there were no other concessions that they were asking for. You just said 2 minutes ago they weren't asking for concessions. You just said 2 minutes ago it was a doomed strategy because there was no alternative to Nancy Pelosi who was plausible. And now she's saying, well, actually, I wrote this article about alternative concessions. Well, name one besides Medicare for all. Well, 2 minutes ago, you weren't even agreeing to that premise, right? And now here you are.
And included a list of subsequent ancillary demands that he had written up in his own publication. And I linked to them and say that these are also important. The important thing is that we need to demand something in exchange for our votes. But we don't need to rehash that. Go ahead. I'll give you the last.
No, I need to say one last thing, Briahna. I need to say one last thing. You guys make it sound like we're the ones who have animus. No, be clear about how this thing started.
Yes, you are.
I told you in the beginning, I said, well, that's interesting.
Okay, so that's another tactic. She was focusing in on specifics, and he decided, let's broaden out the argument as now we're going to go back and litigate who was nicer, right? We're going to turn it from an argument about the specifics to something very vague and very sort of emotional and therefore very sort of amorphous, which is who was meaner? Who was meaner? Who started it? Who started the fight?
It's so fucking juvenile. It's so juvenile. It's so inside baseball. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? I'm watching this as a right winger. I'm very happy. Oh, these are the people representing the left. Goody. And yet, Jesus Christ, they're not the left. We know. I'm sorry. They're going to be all over that in the comment section. They're not the left. We know. That's the point. But unfortunately, they are much more visible than one might consider the real left.
Right.
Well, that's the thing right there. What Russell said regarding due dissonance. This is why. Well, there are people out there that think that I am a absolutist Jimmy Dore fan, that I hang on to every word that Jimmy Dore says as if it was gospel. I like Jimmy Dore. I listen to Jimmy Dore regularly. I like what he says most of the time. There are some things that Jimmy Dore would say that I would disagree with. And that applies to everybody that I listen to in this online space. as much as I dislike the Young Turks, there are times that I will see something that, even though I'm not subscribed to the Young Turks, something will pop up on my YouTube feed, and I'll take a look at what they'll have to say, and sometimes they'll come up with a story or segment that will still make sense. Yes, even Cenk Uygur and Birthing Person and a Kasparian will make still occasional sense. Not as much as they used to, and far less than they used to. They've gotten so milquetoast and mainstream. But I'm not a sectarian. I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm a free thinker. You know, if somebody says something that makes sense, somebody says something that makes sense. Alex Jones, I don't like Alex Jones, but props to him 10 years ago when he was defending the Occupy Wall Street leftists who were getting attacked by the cops. I don't like Alex Jones, but he was defending leftists from getting attacked by cops from Occupy Wall Street. Okay. One of the rare times you're going to hear me say, thank you, Alex Jones. Doesn't mean that I like what Alex Jones have to say. Now, getting back to Jimmy Dore. Okay, when he was interviewing the Boogaloo Boys, I was just thinking to myself, what the fuck? Why are you doing that? What have you? There were things, the going overboard on Kyle Rittenhouse, and even some aspects of the interview with Cornel West, arguing for class reductionism a little bit too aggressively. Things like that. I don't agree with Jimmy Dore, but Jimmy Dore, the reason why a lot of people on the left, even a lot of good people on the left, have a problem with Jimmy Dore is because he is not a right-winger. I think people don't understand what Jimmy Dore is trying to do. Jimmy Dore is an accelerationist. Briahna Joy Gray is an accelerationist. Cenk Uygur, Sam Cedar, David Pakman, and I'm not attacking them here in this instance, but I'm saying what they are practicing is harm reduction. Bosh, harm reduction. So within the online left, the battle is between harm reduction and accelerationism. And when you argue for independent political actions, it very well may mean that the Republicans could win. But that's because the Democrats have been so much fucking garbage that you want a third party choice. It's not that you're voting third party because you want Republicans to win, but you're trying again to do leverage to pressure the Democrats to be better, or to hopefully get elected so you can fill in where the Democrats have gone wrong. I mean, in America, you had the Socialist Party of America that was the alternative to the Democrats. And the Democrats saw the Socialist Party of America during the days of FDR, and they were like, holy shit, we better start doing something for workers. If we don't do something for the workers, they're going to go and join the Socialist Party, and the Democrats are going to be irrelevant. So they got scared, and so FDR watered down the socialism into his New Deal. To a lesser extent, one could say that LBJ watered down some more socialism economically into his domestic Great Society. We're not talking about the Vietnam War. Fuck LBJ for his involvement in Vietnam. But domestically, with the anti-poverty programs in the 1960s, the Great Society, they were good. They just didn't go far enough. But the point I'm also trying to make is that that's what people don't understand. I do not like Brooklyn Dad Defiant, but I will give Brooklyn Dad Defiant credit for one thing. When he's no fan of Jimmy Dore, but he realizes that Jimmy Dore is a left-wing accelerationist. And I will give him that. It's the only nice thing you're going to ever hear me say about Brooklyn Dad Defiant. Otherwise, Brooklyn Dad Defiant can fuck himself.
interesting. Let's have a conversation about strategy. And the minute I said, let's have a conversation about strategy, Jimmy said that we were taking money from the CIA and Nancy Pelosi. You just mentioned David Sirota. He also attacked David Sirota. He also attacked Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! and insinuated she was working with the CIA. So then I thought, well, no, I'm not going to work with a lunatic who thinks that Amy Goodman might be working.
Now, look, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know when Jimmy accused him of working for the CIA. First of all, if Jimmy did accuse him of that, I would have to disagree with Jimmy there, because I don't think the CIA would entrust someone with this big a fucking mouth and this short a fuse with any privileged information that they did not want out there or to do their bidding. Maybe Amy Goodman. She seems like she's fairly level-headed. This guy, they're going to trust this guy in like the Burn After Reading movie. They would trust the CIA would partner up with him. But I don't remember that happening. I did remember there was a YouTube video where Max Blumenthal was talking about with Jimmy Dore about how a lot of their critics were connected with, Google, because Google's YouTube and everything like that. So there was an insinuation of a certain sort of connection there. But that was
I want to also touch on that point, because I know some people who would criticize me for liking Jimmy Dore in the gray zone, and have used the argument that Jimmy Dore in the gray zone and a few others have accused BreadTube or the online left of being funded by the CIA. And here's my proof that I don't rubber stamp everything that Jimmy Dore or the gray zone have to say, because I kind of do reject that. I do. To me, I don't think that they take the online left that seriously. I think that the online left, I do take the online left seriously, but I don't think that the CIA does. Because, the left ain't that big. The left is very weak in this country. Even now that the left is a little stronger than it was 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it's still relatively weak. So, I don't believe that TYT or Chapo Trap House or the Gray Zone themselves or Jimmy Dore or anybody in the whole spectrum of the online left, I don't believe there's any real ties to the CIA. I don't even think Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Is tied in with the CIA. I think that this gets a little bit ridiculous. So I just want to point that out. And I disagree with the Gray Zone on the Pussy Riot thing. I get accused of being pro-Russia by a lot of folks. And I understand why they come to that conclusion. Because I have a very, very negative view of the Ukraine government, not the people, but of the government of Ukraine. It's a corrupt government. It's a right-wing government. It's a more authoritarian government. It's a government riddled with neo-Nazis. It's a government that's more homophobic than Russia is, believe it or not. It's a government that bans the Russian Orthodox Church. It's a government that's engaging in ethnic cleansing against Russian ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. It's a government that banned 13 political parties. It's a government that banned collective bargaining. It's a government that suspended elections, and it's a government that has a kill list that wants to seek out people across the world that dare question them, doxing them. Everyone from Gerhard Schroeder of Germany to Henry Kissinger to Scott Ritter and Jimmy Dore to Greta Thunberg. I mean, to Garland Nixon, to Glenn Greenwald, to Tulsi Gabbard, to Rand Paul. I mean, it's a Henry Kissinger, to Noam Chomsky. I mean, it's a wide ideological gulf of people that Ukraine wants to eliminate. And the U.S., we give billions to a government like that. So anybody I understand why people, when I said what I have to say about the Ukraine, I can understand why people would think I'm pro-Russia. I would never vote for Putin. I promise you that. I would, I would never, and I'm not pro Putin, but I do see somewhat where Russia is coming from, and I do see them as the lesser aggressor in the conflict. But on the Pussy Riot question, they're right to stand up against the misogyny and the sexism that exists in Russia, against the bigotry that exists against LGBTQ in Russia. So again, I'm a consistent motherfucker on this sort of thing. So anyway, that was my little side point.
It's a year after Forced to Vote. So unless he's talking about something I don't remember, I don't know that he was ever accused of working for the CIA. And again, you think the CIA is going to trust this fucking guy? This guy gets mild pushback from Briahna Joy Gray. He almost blows his top. I don't know if he's the best recruit.
Amy Goodman was accused at one point of garroting an opposition leader in Brazil. But there's never been any hard evidence.
Hard evidence of that. Right.
Yeah, most people don't take it seriously. This whole thing, it gets really pathetic. Jimmy, you know what Jimmy did? One time I gave him change for the meter and he didn't even give it back to me. Shut the fuck up, man. Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about your personal fucking small dick beef with fucking Jimmy Dore.
I gave him the company credit card. I sent him to Starbucks. I said, get yourself a grande. He got a venti on a company card.
Yeah. A venti.
Didn't even ask.
Venti.
Didn't offer to pay the difference. Just brought it back, drank it right in my face. Right in front of my face.
And for the record, there are other people that used to be affiliated with TYT, people like Michael Figueredo and people like that basically told TYT to fuck off, and nobody's accusing them of being right wing either. I just want to say that much. I don't know if David Dildo is still David Dole. Dildo is still with TYT, but then again, I don't listen to David Dildo.
It just degenerates into this just very childish, whining about Jimmy Dore. I mean, clearly Jimmy's living in his head rent free, and again, that tells me a lot about the fact that you're intimidated by him, and you feel that he's. Look, worst interpretation, he doesn't believe any of this, and Jimmy's undermining his grift. I think it's more psychologically complicated than that, but I think it still goes back to he's undermining his grift, right?
Well, here's the thing. TYT and Jimmy Dore, the TYT left and the Jimmy Dore left, needs to realize that Pod Save America, that's your real enemy. I'm talking to both TYT lefties and the Jimmy Dore lefties. Pod Save America is your real enemy. They're the ones. They're worse than the TYT people who hates the Jimmy Dore left. That's not your enemy. Your enemy is Pod Save America. You just need to realize that. Everybody needs to realize that. I just wanted to go and make a dig at Pod Save America.
Somebody out there calling out the obvious flaws in your argument who has a bigger platform, I would hypothesize, I'm pretty sure, and not in sub counts, but in viewers. I'm pretty sure Jimmy pulls in more viewers than the Young Turks do.
Yeah, I'd be almost positive of that.
People who actually watch his show.
Yeah. Certainly viewers per video. I mean, the TYT has all these million sister shows. Who knows? But in terms of like per video view count, theirs has to be lower than his by now. Has to be.
Right. So that's probably pissing him off. And Jimmy's out there to offer a counter argument. And it really clearly puts a fucking bug up his ass. I mean, look at him at the end of this interview, man. Because Cenk has skills. He knows better. That's the thing. He knows better. He's got to know this doesn't make you look good to be sitting here talking about how much you hate Jimmy Dore. You know what else he said? And you know what else he did? Like, like that helps your argument? No, it just makes you look like a childish asshole with no real rebuttal to what you just said.
Working with the CIA. And second of all, I didn't start the fight. This lunatic comes in frothing at the mouth. I'm being funded by CIA. And it's like, listen, how are you supposed to have a rational conversation with an absolute lunatic like that?
This is the point I made on Post-Duopoly show last night, too. I distinctly remember, and Kit backed me up on this because I hadn't watched the video in a long time, obviously. But I distinctly remember when Jimmy came up with the forced to vote idea, he specifically said that he was willing to bury the hatchet and let bygones be bygones with anyone who joined him on this. He said, past conflicts will be water under the bridge if we unite on this issue.
Actually, I remember Sam Cedar saying that he acknowledged that forced to vote was a good idea, and that he actually complimented Jimmy Dore. I actually do remember Sam Cedar for 5 seconds complimenting Jimmy Dore. And I mean that's actually something to be noteworthy about. And then I guess he got the memo. You can't go and forgive him. You got to go back to hating the guy. So there you have it. There you have it. You know. Let's continue.
Specifically said that. So the idea that he came in frothing at the mouth and accusing everybody who questioned him of being funded by the CIA is, again, just another very egregious untruth. In the first video, he said, I forget the exact wording, but Kit backed me up on this last night. He said, whoever wants to partner on this, I will partner with. Whatever we said in the past to each other, we'll let that go. And so, again, he came in frothing at the mouth. No. Again, the videos are all up there. This is what you were saying. It's not like people can't go back and check this. It's very, very obvious. It's fresh in a lot of our memories, but even the parts of this that aren't are very easily checkable. And yet he's still here. He is.
And then you guys think we started it? Are you insane?
I didn't say you started it. I don't care about the personalities. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
That's not
yes,
true.
He did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is able, as a mature person, to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left.
Robbie's reaction from Rising, he's thinking, what the fuck? Yeah, I don't blame you.
And less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message, especially if you're right, Cenk, and it's going to require a united and powerful independent media force in order to actually ever get a progressive into office. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking through some of these tough issues.
No problem. And you guys are funded by the CIA. But I'm sure you won't take offense at that. So just be cool. Let's agree on policies. But you're obviously, Briahna had bought her house, has a Mercedes and a Rolls Royce, all funded by Hillary Clinton and the CIA. But it's cool. It's cool. Let's stay friends.
About the only thing Briahna has convinced me of on the show is that there is, in fact, more dysfunction on the left than on the right. And today is a good example of that. Thank you very much, Cenk.
That, unfortunately, is true.
And that's exactly what Russell just said. If you're a right-winger looking at this, as Robbie is and was looking at it, yeah, that's the exact conclusion you would come away with.
Yeah, that end was just pathetic. Well, what if I called you a CIA plant? Would you be friends with me? Would you be cool with that? Come on, man. What a fucking childish asshole. You know, this is why they have to put Anna out front. She, you know, I would think, I don't even know what she advocates at this point, but I would think she would have handled herself in that interview a little bit better than he did.
Yes, I imagine that's true. And honestly, now that you mention her, I don't recall where she stood in any of that. I don't remember her injecting herself into that debate very much, but I could be wrong. I just don't have.
I mean, at this point, she's kind of the face of the network, right? Like, he goes on, but not as much as she does. Isn't she more like the central host at this point?
I have no idea because I do not watch.
No,
so
neither really. But whenever a Young Turk story comes up, it's usually she's taking the lead in the video.
All right. Yeah.
She's the new co-host of Rising. And honestly, it's improved. I don't watch it much, but it's improved from where it was at. I mean, it's even better than when Crystal Ball and Sagar and Genty were running the show 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever the fuck they were running the show. But yeah, I mean, that's what's going on there. You know, as I said, there's a lot of dysfunctionality. Actually, it's dysfunctionality on the right too. I mean, you know, don't act like it's just a left thing. I mean, it was delicious seeing Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, getting pissed off of each other, and have Candace Owens basically calling this idiot Steven Crowder, calling him a socialist, because to call him a socialist. And I despise all three of them: Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and Steven Crowder. So it's not like oh well, who do I dislike least? I mean, with those three on the right, just kind of like, it's like choosing a dog shit sandwich, a cat shit sandwich, or a bird shit sandwich. It's all shit. But getting back to this, let's go and talk on the chat lines and talk to my friends here. So I saw Snipe Hunter, I saw Warren here, and so I see Steve E. How are you doing, Steve? I normally say hello because I feel like barking dog, but under the circumstances, I want to say hi. Well, hi, Steve. How are you doing today? And yeah, thank you about being patient about the technical difficulties. I still apologize about that. I'm getting a new computer probably in the next few days, so we should be having less problems. So I'll probably be making a decision where I'm going to get what computer I'm going to be getting, and probably by Tuesday. So hold tight. Most people make us watch 10 minutes of music while they work it out. Yeah. Let's see. Well, if I don't have technical difficulties, if I don't have technical difficulties, I'm returning this beer. Oh, if I would have waken up earlier, I would have actually had alcohol, but that's a different story. So let's see here. I'm checking down here. I'm scrolling down a little bit further. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much my steady diet of online left programming these days. RBN, Due Dissidence, Hardlands Media, and Turncoat Don. Yeah, that's pretty much what I watch most of the time. INN too. I watch INN. I watch Jimmy Dore, of course, Gray Zone. That's kind of what I watch most of the time. I still might go with the classics like Amazing Atheist when I know he's going to say something sarcastic and funny. So Cenk is a big liar. Big whoop. Maybe the conversation should have been general propaganda machine that hurries us toward the center, which always winds up with more corporate power. Yes. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he and what's her name? He and birthing persons been taking some very centricity positions is very disconcerting too. And they've been getting their butt hurt over the left lately. I mean, even the left that hates each other, the Jimmy Dore left, and they've been getting mad at Lance Fundersaurus and the Michael Figueredos. They've been getting mad at some of these other folks. So and Bosch, they were getting mad at him. So yeah, it's kind of hilarious what's been going on. David, how are you today? Oh my God, we're still talking about forced to vote in 2023. Yes, because honestly, we could have had something done about healthcare. We could have moved beyond the Affordable Care Act and moved toward something positive. And I know you support Medicare for all, David. Only who seems to be obsessed with this forced to vote thing is Dore orbiters. It's like they lost sense of reality. No wonder many of them followed Dore in his transphobia, his anti-climate change, denial of anti-vax. what I got to say about that. I disagree with Jimmy Dore about the women's and sports and things of that nature. And some things he's had to say about trans women, I disagree with. I'm fully in favor of trans rights. As I am, because I have friends who are trans, and I am a civil libertarian, and all that. But an inappropriate joke, tongue-in-cheek joke about in a very friendly, politically incorrect way is not homophobia or transphobia. He's Generation X, bordering on boomer from that 1980s. So he has that kind of like politically incorrect 1980s kind of left liberal take on things, and I think it's just not. It's kind of a little out of fashion for today. I think that's why some people make kind of a somewhat inaccurate conclusions about Jimmy Dore. And I'm not defending some of the remarks he says. Some of the remarks I disagree with, and I do disagree with him. Reality, force to vote. The doorknobs hates Bernie Sanders and many of the squad members, yet they want them to do some force to vote strategy made up by some podcasters. Force to vote was made up by DSA. DSA came up with a strategy, and their animosity toward Bernie Sanders and AOC and the squad would not transpire if they would just stop acting like Joe Biden is their good friend. And that's the problem right there with them, in that regard. Joe Biden is a terrible president. Let's see, made the baby and then killed it. That's a good way to put it. I mean, where are the children of Bernie Sanders? Even the people who are on the left that are talking crap about Bernie Sanders, that were supporters of Bernie Sanders 3 and 4 years ago, we're pretty much the product of Bernie Sanders. So we're a creation of Bernie Sanders, all of us. And Bernie Sanders might have himself to blame for some of us talking mean about him these days. Let's see here. I like Ralph Nader, and I would vote for him again. Me too. I would, without even a second thought. I would, without a slightest bit of hesitation. The Democrats are the vector for right-wing policies. The Democrats pushes the Overton window to the right. It is very true. All right, Ralph is a good candidate. The other Green Party candidates were terrible. I hate to say this about Howie Hawkins, but I wish I could have voted for somebody else other than Howie Hawkins in 2020 because of his position on the Russian-Ukraine war, his position on Julian Assange, and his unfair attacks on Tulsi Gabbard. I love Russell. No one can like him. I want to see what the verdict is on Russell Brand, but I do think it's politically motivated to go after him at the moment. And if he's guilty, prosecute him to the fullest letter of the law. I believe. I don't go with this Me Too extremism. I do believe that if you're guilty of sexual harassment in whatever forms, punish that action. But you got to have evidence. It's not a matter of believe all women, and it's not a matter of dismissing all women either. It's a matter of whoever is guilty, prosecute. Whoever is not guilty, don't go and ruin their lives if they're not guilty. I believe in social justice, but I also believe in blind justice, and I believe that they should go hand in hand. People or just a comment. Let's see here. Do talk to people. Let's see. Okay. I want to touch on this point here. Willie, Gaddafi wasn't a good guy. And I didn't say he was. If I said that, I didn't mean to imply it that way. What I said was I was raised to believe he was a horrible person. But he did some good things for the people of Libya, the universal health care, the universal basic income, using the money that was raised from oil, that since they were an oil-producing country, to help the people of Libya. And that's what I was talking about. They had a standard of living, and I usually criticize Saudi Arabia and Kuwait for their Sharia nonsense. But what I'm going to praise those countries on is the guaranteed income, where there's no poverty in those countries. And that's what they achieved in Libya. And that I can't take away. I'm not a Marxist Leninist communist, and there are questions of civil liberties that I have problems with during the 70 years of the Soviet Union and all these years in Cuba. But I'm not going to take away from the fact that they provided medical care, which is a good thing. They provided housing for the people, which is a good thing. Education for the people, which is a good thing. Guaranteed jobs for the people, which is a good thing. To take care of the people, which is a good thing. I would never, ever take that away from them. They could have done better on civil liberties. But then again, they're human beings. And as human beings, we're all flawed. There's never been a benevolent, a totally benevolent government anywhere. Nowhere on this planet throughout human civilization. Because we're all human beings at the end of the day. But what the United States have done is no excuse either. And the United States have plenty of crimes to account for. Trust me when I say that. Let's see. All right. Okay, and I'm going to log off very shortly. Let me answer this. Definitely has as you compare. Definitely a little less radical as you compare Briahna Joy Gray to Olemi Alaram. I think that it's not a matter of who's more or less radical, but I just think that Briahna Joy Gray, she probably shares my politics. I mean, the politics that she has is basically my politics. Her heart's in the right place and her brain wants to help, but she has no experience in desperation. I disagree. I like her. I think she was the best part of the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020, because the 2020 Bernie Sanders campaign was a disaster because what was working for him in 2016 turned against him in 2020. But she was, even though she wasn't a part of the 2016 campaign, that she was a reminder of that in 2020. Let's see here. I don't think that BJG, Briahna Joy Gray, is an accelerationist. She just defends some on YouTube, RBN. Well, I don't mean accelerationist like violent revolution, but a situation where people will realize and wake up and realize we had enough of this shit, and we're going to go and demand change right now. Like for example, and we're going to give you a peaceful example. What happened in Portugal in 1974 with the Carnation Revolution? The people demanded democracy after almost a half a century of fascism. A softer variety compared to Italy and Germany's wasn't to that level, but it was still a form of fascism, similar to Augusto Pinochet's government in Chile in the 1970s. Anyway, but the people had enough of it. So, all right. Very true. Kissinger did campaign for Hillary because Kissinger was he presumably a never Trumper. Let's see. Pod Save America is whatever is under the rim of the toilet bowl. I never checked to see. Yeah, that's actually too nice of a thing to say about them. Sam Cedar makes David Dole seem like a nice person. Now, Sam Cedar can be funny at times. I will give him that. He can be funny at times. And there's a lot of times he's not wrong, but the Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome and the vote blue no matter who mentality is what kind of turned me away from. I used to watch Majority Report years ago. Let's see here. I'm looking through. I'm trying to Synthex, I think that's how you say it. Shank reference. Okay, I'm looking. And Sebastiano says Jimmy Dore was right about DSA's strategy to force a vote. And of course he was. Yeah, of course he was. So what's there to argue about in that regard? As I said. But anyway, let's see. Let me just answer one more. A new one, politics girl. Oh my God! Remember Combo Couch and Status Quo? So let's see. Combo Couch. I like the Combo Couch. I've had Fiorella Isabel on my show. I met Pasta Jardula at Rage Against the War Machine. And I know. I don't know them personally, but they know me. I know them. They know who I am. Obviously, Status Quo. He's sort of 50-50. It's like sometimes I sort of lump him in with the Young Turks types, and sometimes he has good sense. It just it just I guess depends on what mood he's in. So his takes are not always bad, but it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to get offline. Talk long enough. It's a little extra longer than usual. Didn't mean it to be. Announcements to make, and that's what I'm going to do. Right now, tonight, there's the secret show at midnight, and that's with Jimi Sunderland and Uncle Warren. And they're going to be on at midnight, so be sure to watch their show. And that's Extra Bula. I will put down the link right now, and I will more than likely put down the link on the description page, since it's on a Saturday night when I get offline. So let me do that. Okay, let me do this really quick. That's another reason I got to get a new computer, because I'm having trouble typing E. Having to punch the E a little harder. Extra. Okay, so to get on there, you go on Extra Bula right there, and that will put you on the secret show. So for tonight, so go ahead and go there and say at midnight, say hello to Warren, say hello to Jimmy, tell them I sent you, and also on Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Check out Braglands, and Braglands is co-hosted by myself, Willie Bragg, and also co-hosted by Jimi Sunderland, who also is the co-host of the Secret Show. So I urge you to do that. That's our new show. And please give us a sub for Braglands. We're just starting and we're trying to build our channel. So if you go on youtube.com at Bragland Show, just give us a sub and you'll find our Twitter information and everything else over there. And you can follow us on Twitch as well and all of that. So so anyway, yeah, please help out if you can. And I'll go ahead and put show y'all the thing for Bragland. So let me do this real quick. All right. And I'll do this. And I'm about ready to sign off because I talk your ear off long enough. So, and there will be another day that I can do that for y'all. There we go. And this is for Braglands right here. And that's our new show. You'll get the news that you want. So be sure to sub to Braglands. And that's youtube.com/@BraglandShow. And help build that channel. So anyway, I want to wish you all good night. And if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment if you disagree with what I have to say. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. Remember to go ahead and subscribe to our channel, to this channel, here on YouTube, Twitch. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And do the same thing for Braglands. And always reject corporate media. Because remember, we're all Julian Assange at the end of the day. So anyway, I'm going to let y'all go. Y'all have a great evening, and I will see you all soon. Have a great night. Au revoir.